Hi, welcome to NDE TV. I'm Peggy Robinson. Today's guest is Lewis Brown Griggs, and he's had three near-death experiences, which I guess some people say some weren't near-death experiences. They were this and that and that, and I don't believe that. So, hi, welcome, Lewis.
Thank you. It's fun to be with you. And you're right. Words are just words about how we define them, but how about they are life-changing experiences, you know?
And I don't know who has the right to say, other than us, what it
That's
was,
right. Exactly
and who
right.
makes up these definitions in some room somewhere based on what I don't know.
That's right.
I don't think we have enough science to say it is this and this is that. And until we do, that's how I feel.
Exactly. No, I'll tell you a story after I share my experiences about how um, Discovery Channel tried to prove that we didn't have them.
I was just listening to that a while ago when I was getting ready for this show, so I'm interested for you to talk about that here too.
Okay, well, so boy, where do we start? We start with the fact that when I grew up in Minnesota, and I grew up in a family that had helped create the state, and so they were all very proud of all the generations and all the success. And my loving parents said, "We're all one under God, but you're different. You're better because of the privilege you had." And so I grew up kind of feeling like, ooh, I had to be better or something. But I knew at the soul level we were all one. So the reason I'm telling you that history is because when I moved to California in 76, all the way across the country from Boston, um, I was working in public television, and yet I was in my late 20s. And, I believe, like most of you believe, that most of us men don't get out of our teens until our late 20s. And so it was about that time that I was wondering, gee, what is my purpose in life? What am I really here for? I had worked in government, and I'd worked in a nonprofit, and I'd worked in public television, and I still didn't know. And so for me to get clearer, obviously I needed to be called into the light. And so on one day, you don't know where I am in Berkeley, California, but I totaled my car. And when the pickup truck and I hit in the intersection, I left. And my memory is so perfect of what I'm going to share with you. The word has never changed since March 11th, 77, when I had this first near death experience. And that is, I went high speed through what we now call the tunnel,
You did
all the way,
this. Was you like spinning?
all the way into light, just.
Okay.
And I've heard so many other wonderful stories that in this case, I want to tell you, I did not stop and watch the accident. I did not stop and watch surgery. I didn't meet deceased loved ones. I, in this case, went high speed through this tunnel into pure and absolute light. And the only way I know to experience it with words is to say, I clearly was in the source of all energy, light, consciousness, knowledge, love, the source from which we all come and of which we are all one. Those words came to me up there. I really got that, whether you believe or not, in prior lives, I got this is where our souls came from, and we have had prior lives. Well, if we've had prior lives, you know what else? That means last time you and I were not in these bodies. Whoa, try that one on. That's humbling, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay. And therefore, if I got in the light that we're all one from the same source, and in these bodies, we are uniquely different because we are now in the only DNA in the history of life on Earth. Suddenly, it was made simpler for me to understand all of our human diversity with less of the human bias and judgment we all naturally have because you don't look like me. You must be from another tribe or something, you know? But we are all one and uniquely different. And that was really a good learning for me, given how I grew up in an all white privileged environment. And I saw the diverse humans all over this earth, but I couldn't understand at all what it was like for them and who they were, since they were so different, right? And if you can't do that just walking a block away, just imagine all the indigenous people on earth in Africa and in wherever, and all the different cultures and races and ethnicities and languages. It's like, wow, how can we be all one? We're all totally weird to one another. Well, the both are true. We are one and unique. And I got that in the light. However, that's not all I got. That was what I gained from being among all the consciousness and knowledge that is at the source. But then I had an experience not everybody has. I actually had a voice speak to me. Now, some of you have heard the books, seen the books Conversation with God, but that's what it was like. However, we use the word God, I now use the word source. And this voice, which of course was exactly in the language in which I needed to hear it. So that always is true, whichever voice you will hear. I heard this voice of a male voice saying, Lewis, you were brought here to have this conversation and to be sent back because you're not doing your work. Period. Those words have never changed. You are called here to have this conversation and to be sent back, because a lot of people aren't sure if they can stay or go or can choose to stay or go. I was told you have no choice. You are called here to have this conversation and be sent back because you're not doing your work. In response to which I said, well, take me, I'm yours. I'll do your work. Thinking I was being called to be a missionary of some sort to teach everyone else who doesn't know it what the truth is. No, that's because I was raised in an Episcopalian and Christianity was all I knew. But no, that wasn't it. So I was told by the voice, no, Lewis, it's your work you need to do, not my work. And then I asked, well, what is my work? You know how most of us don't know what our life purpose is, and we wonder what we're here for. That was what I was wondering. So, what is my work? And since I'm in the source of all knowledge, of course, I expected to be told. No, I was asked instead, well, what is it, Lewis, that keeps you from being all you are capable of being? Now, notice it didn't have the word doing in it, because this privileged white boy felt like I could do whatever I wanted. I needed to hear the question, what was it that kept me from being all I'm capable of being? And I didn't know. So I had to really go deeply to try to come up with this answer. And the closest I could come is, well, the way I was raised, even though I was told we're all one under God, but somehow I was different and better, but they didn't mean my soul was better. They just meant my privilege meant noblesse oblige. I had to give back. I could do what I wanted and I had to give back. But somehow I grew up feeling, well, if I'm better even in that way, it made me feel uncomfortable. It didn't make me feel arrogant. I never got like that. It made me, and guilty is too strong because I didn't create it. So I'm not guilty. There's no shame. There's no blame. I'm just in this body. And as some guy asked me once in a weekend workshop, Lewis, what's it like to have your soul be so different than the body you're now living in? That was a pretty deep question. Yeah, because I just felt like I'm me at the essential level, whatever that is. But then I have to recognize, like we all do, I'm in this body and I look like this to you, and you look like that to me. And, we have different melanin and different gender and different hair and different eyes. But those are the ways we're different. Anyway, so I tried to answer, what is it that keeps me from being? And my honest answer was, well, the way I was raised, I was ignorant of how anybody else was communicating to me because they came out of different backgrounds and ethnic groups and languages and cultures and all that. So I realized they were doing all of the work, the cross-cultural bridging work, code switching work, to talk with people like me, straight, white, Anglo yuppie wasps, and even white females, even as you know, Peggy, had to learn to talk to your father or your brother or your husband or your whatever, men in the workplace, right? Because we were dominating in this culture. In other cultures, just think I'd be lost in Japan or in the Middle East or somewhere else. So there's no arrogance here. Every
My last
culture.
job was on the pipeline with my husband.
Yes,
Try
exactly.
fitting in there.
Exactly. So when I realized everyone else had to do that work and I never had needed to do it because everyone else had done it to talk to me, I had no idea how to relate to anybody different than I. It's total ethnocentrism, total ignorance of how to do it. And that was what it felt like. So that was my answer in the light. I said, I guess the way I was raised, I have no idea how to relate across differences. And the answer from the voice came like the best moment in the movie Amadeus, if any of you remember it, when Mozart hit the perfect note and went, he heard the perfect note. So when I said, I don't know how to do any of the bridging across any difference, this voice said, there it is, Lewis. There's your work. And I was sent back down immediately, right through the same tunnel with not another word. And I remember landing back inside this body and literally coming fully back into the body like those, like you feel in those tight surgical gloves, not the loose ones at the sink that we don't wear what we should. The really tight ones. It's like every inch had to get back into this body. And then I was in the body and all the light disappeared, went right out of me. And I was in a total automobile with no physical damage. And I walked out of the automobile and told the ambulance that had just arrived that there is no problem. And my life started to change, even though I wasn't told how it would change. And the first way it started to change was that I felt doors started to open that I had nothing to do with. Now, that may sound strange, but that was a deep learning to feel that when a door opens that we didn't control,
Mhm.
that's actually an opportunity for learning and for growing and for sort of asking oneself, how did I get here?
Right.
And it's a great example of how to just be there first instead of and be in charge and do. So I started to learn, wow, something's happening. What I'll just go in and see what I'm here to learn. And to be before I do. It may sound strange to be authentic, to notice, to feel the environment, to feel what the other person's feeling. I mean, we straight white men in North America thought originally 85 to 90% of all communication is verbal. The words we say, right? I mean, didn't you understand the words I just said? Oh, it's embarrassing. When we learn that the truth is the opposite, the words we say are only part of our communication, and the body language, the energy, mine, yours, the authenticity, the facial expressions, the emotions, the context in which we speak. Oh my God, that is communication. That's hearing, that's listening. I only learned that by having to be taken into the light and notice and come back and just be. It's like such a gift. I now am so lucky I don't have to think I'm right all the time, or I have to be. And that the ignorance of not knowing the answer is the opportunity to learn. And that each of you who's listening, but you, Peggy, you have life experience that I don't have. I can learn with you and learn who you are and relate to you much more consciously, spiritually, and intimately, by feeling and hearing what you're saying. It's such a gift. So all of that came out of that near-death experience. So before I go to the second one, I am happy since there's not a big audience who can ask. But Peggy, if you have a question, feel free to ask it.
I
If not,
just had a thought come to my mind. It's like we can't grow until we get out of our shell.
Exactly.
This is fun
Exactly.
to me.
Thank you. That's right. If we stay trapped in this, yeah, I could stay exactly this way and no shame. You could stay that way and I could stay this way. But if I stayed this way, I would be straight, white, Anglo, 14th generation, all Mayflower, Anglo, yuppie wasp, with a golden retriever and a Volvo wagon. And I played tennis and I went to private school and I vote this way and this way. And it's like, hello. Even as I was talking, you had no idea who I really was. It's like a little robot. Oh, what a difference it makes. Oh, thank you. So, as if that wasn't enough, it did help me, just so you know how I used that work I had to do. That means I and my global wife at the time started the first cultural diversity training in the country in 1982 with 23 videos, seminars, workbooks, workshops around the country, the National Diversity Conference we created. All of that was created by the straight white guy who didn't get it because I could only teach what I had to learn. So I had to learn everything from scratch about cross-cultural communication and then any differences, age, gender, whatever. And that's all we did. Now there's thousands of us doing that work, but we really did start it. And that's how I got called to do that work. Because otherwise, as you can imagine, every time I go speak, and everybody in the room is not a white male, because they don't come to these things typically. It's all the other diverse people who want to hear about diversity. And when I walk in, you can feel the whole audience go, oh, who invited this guy? What does he know about diversity? So I had to start everything with, did you feel that? I did. Thank you. You remind me of what it's like when you come into our room. Consciousness. Okay. So I spent 20 years being and doing that. Then, with my 10-year-old son and my 15-year-old bipolar daughter, who had just graduated from a recovery school up in Montana at age 15, feeling and looking wonderful, I said, wow, you look so great, Ashley. And Ian, can you handle if I take us on a whitewater river trip? I've taught you hiking, skiing, nature, but I've never taken you on a whitewater trip. This is an easy one, not one with waterfalls or anything, but just a nice, beautiful trip. And they said, sure, Dad. And as we were going down the river and the water got a little faster, you could feel my 10-year-old boy look at me like, uh-oh. And I'll never forget, and they'll never forget, because this is the last moment of any memory I have. The rest I'm going to tell you is this true story. I looked at him and said, trust me, you're going to love this. Now we joke. Okay, Dad. Anyway, the water got so high and wide and fast that trees were falling, losing their roots on the edge of the river from the snowmelt and the rain. And a 100-foot tall tree, fell off the edge of the river like this and landed on my head on the raft and my son's head. Not my daughter. She avoided it. And the roots were still on the edge. So the tree was holding the raft, but the water kept going by now. And that tree was on top of my head, fractured skull, blood, pus. I have no memory of this, no consciousness of this. And my son, who's alive also now, was drowned face down, fractured skull and face down in the raft. And they picked him up and thought he was dead and drowned. They knocked the water out of him, put him in the arms of my daughter and said, you have to try to keep him alive now by talking to him and keeping his eyes open. Whereas they thought I was dead. And because the blood and the fractured skull and the mess and the tree was still on top of my head on the edge of the raft, if you can imagine. And so they removed the tree, which wasn't easy, and they found out there was some life in me, even though I was talking gobbledygook. The brain damage was so severe, I didn't know anything about where I was or what was happening. And I just said, I've got to get back to work, or something stupid. And they had to tie me up because I was just not able to even manage my own body. And we had to wait for a helicopter to fly from an hour away. And it took my son first, this little helicopter, because he only had 2 hours to live, they told me. And I had 4 hours to live. So the helicopter came back and got me. Amazing. And we took a river trip 20 years after that, I and my son and my daughter. And just to see where it had happened. And the same guides drove from all over Montana to be with us on Father's Day, in 97, 20 years after the accident. No, the accident was Father's Day, 97. I forgot to tell you that. Okay. And the time we went back down the river was 20 years later on Father's Day, 07. Okay. 17, Father's Day, 17. Right.
Okay.
So the learning, however, came when I came out of a coma 8 days later, and I discovered I don't know who those people are in the room. My mother, my father, my wife. I had no idea who I was or what I was doing there. And they flew me back to San Francisco quickly and put me in recovery, brain injury recovery in a hospital. And I had to be driven to the hospital every day for brain injury recovery for about a year and a half, and then 3 times a week, and then 1 or 2 times a week in the third year. And they finally let me go, thinking I was okay, but I wasn't. And I knew I wasn't, because you know what you feel like when you have the flu, right? Or a fever. You're 70% your full self. You can't function. That's the way I felt. Anyway, the learning came in the first week. The out-of-body learning came in the first week in the hospital when I was trying to walk on those horizontal bars. And I realized my body wasn't working. I couldn't walk. I couldn't read. I couldn't write. I didn't know who I was, what I was doing, and whoever came to visit me. But you know what I discovered? I have to use the metaphor of either a hurricane or a tornado, whichever one you know better, because at the center, we know it's totally still. Okay? Totally still with all this powerful energy going around in a circle. At the center, if you don't know it, it's still. There's no energy at the very, very, very center. So I felt, just to use the metaphor, at the center of this damaged body and damaged brain, I got, wow, I can't walk. I can't talk. I don't know who I am. But at the core, I am. And I am fine. And I am my soul. And I can feel the light coming in from the 8th chakra. It comes through my entire body. And the soul doesn't die. The soul isn't injured. The soul wasn't hurt the way the body was hurt. And I got a very clear distinction of the difference, just like I had in the white light. But this time, where I discovered we're all one, and we come from that source. Now I discovered that inside this body into which I had returned, I am still the same soul and the same light that came from the source. And that has changed my life so much, because every time I hurt my knee or my ankle or my body, it's just my body and I'm fine. It changed my attitude and my gratitude when I started to learn everything that these brains and bodies are able to do just grew. I never felt angry or disappointed. I constantly felt better every week that I could do something and understand something better than I had the week before. So compared to the day they showed me a picture of a giraffe and a truck and said, "Can you tell me what these are?" And I said, "I'm not sure. I know that's a truck. I've seen that on the street. But that other one, I think I saw it in Africa once." I mean, just to be in the state of damaged brain injury and experience it is a weird experience. But the good news is brain damage usually gives an opportunity for recovery to think of another metaphor of finding, of creating new synapses, because the data is somewhere in the back of the computer. The data of the memory is somewhere. The synapses were broken, so you don't know how to find it. Compared to now, when we're driving on the highway at 70, 60 miles an hour, and we're listening to music and talking to somebody in the car or on the phone, and we can do that and stay in the right lane and notice everything and drive safely. How do we do all of that at the same time? Now, you can't do it at the same time you're texting, right?
Right.
but
You have
but
to
we,
see.
yeah, we have to see, but we can listen to music and we can talk. What? Ah, so I had to regain the appreciation for all of that. And it took me 3 years before the hospital thought I was okay. Whereas it took me 5 years for my extremely sensitive bipolar daughter to go, no, Dad. Now, after 5 years, you're finally the same dad. All those subtle ways we become ourselves again and differently with new consciousness. So the learnings were amazing. The trauma was horrible. And I had to go to trauma therapy. And after a year of trauma therapy, I said, wow, am I capable now of relearning some of the memory? Can you imagine that? All of you who've had trauma that you can't remember, you don't really want to remember it. But I was weird enough. I wanted to try to remember, if I could, what it felt like when the tree hit. And so they took me to the National Conference of Traumatic Brain Injury that was led by a guy named Peter Levine, and whose book, one of his books I read, Awakening the Tiger, I think, something like that. And they put me on stage next to him in front of 350 people. And he said, "Hi, Lewis, what can I do for you today?" And I said, "I'm hoping you can take me back to the moment I was crushed by a falling tree in a Whitewater River accident on Father's Day, June 15th, 1997. And he said, close your eyes. And he took me back somehow, whatever he did, to what I was feeling. So I'm not regaining a picture of the memory, right? I'm gaining a feeling, and I felt, God, I'm trying to survive. I've been crushed by a tree and I desperately have to live instead of die. I felt that. I'm not kidding. And then he took me to another place, or I went there. And my experience of it is when I felt I am alive, I no longer have to worry, I'm alive. I started crying, wondering where my son is. The father in me, any of you who's a parent, mother or father, oh my God, there is no love deeper than the love we have systemically and spiritually for the child, especially if they grew in your body. But even those of us men who love being a father, right? And I know that's not everybody, but I started crying, going, where's my boy? And then I discovered somehow, I don't know if I was told or I felt it, but he was alive. He was in the arms of my daughter. So I stopped crying and I had a third experience, which was, okay, I'm alive. We're all alive. And now I just need to recover. I, I, I can't, I don't like the pain I'm in. I just need to do anything I can to recover. Now, there was no consciousness back who could talk or anything. It was a feeling. So I'm just trying to help you understand. Some of you've been here, that when you've been in a serious accident or you're in the recovery of it, the feelings we get are different, because every little subtle way we learn to be and to walk and talk and think of all those things happening right now. The ones we helped learn, not the ones like the heart and the lung that do it on their own. Yeah? It was amazing, the gratitude and the consciousness as I regained everything. Wow. And I even had to learn I could only do one thing at a time. Whereas before I'd been a wonderful type A who could walk on the street and think and talk and and think of this work. And I had to do one thing at a time. My brain couldn't yet hear the other things going on around me. If there are other people talking and you're talking to me too, I would hear them all the same, you know? And I had to go shh, 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 and get down to one thing. Well, what came out of that retardation, temporary recovery, was the discovery of what it's like to have the focus of only doing one thing. It became amazing. I could see this one thing totally clearly, and I would
Getting in
look
the
at this.
zone naturally.
Yeah. And I still have that gift sometimes. It's no longer a requirement. Yes, I can drive 70 miles an hour and listen to music and talk on the phone and get here safely. It's amazing. And sometimes we don't even remember how we did that, right? But I can appreciate now every second that I choose to focus on. I can see your eyes close, Peggy. I can see when you smile. I can see when you're thinking. I'm back to feeling the experience and the gift of living, breathing, and relating to one another, even through a screen. I mean, that may all sound strange, but the learnings I got from near death and from brain injury and recovery are as great a learning as I got when I learned we're all one and we're uniquely different. Life changing. Okay. So why couldn't I have learned these things without needing to get hit so hard? I don't know. But then another 20 years passed, during which, since I had to go through all that recovery, I had to shut down my company. I couldn't still run all of that. 25 employees, money stopped coming in. My wife left because she was afraid I would never recover and I wouldn't be able to make money. She had an affair and left. I had to sell my home. I lost all my money. But you know what? And so I was so grateful that I thought, well, now what? And somehow I got called instead of producing videos and managing all that. I had to go into coaching and learn how to coach and just talk to one other person and help them become all they were able to become. That became my new learning to coach and to facilitate small groups. I had already learned how to do that. Public speaking is different. You're talking at an audience and trying to feel the energy. Facilitation, you have to interact and listen and be one with the group. Coaching, I had to learn, shut up, Lewis. You don't know anything. The answer is in the client. You just have to ask questions and listen. So that's what I've done for 20 years. So then what on earth did I need another one for? So in 2020, the year that changed a lot of our lives, with COVID, etc., I first was diagnosed with stage 3 cancer and colon cancer. And then I was told, oh my God, they're going to need to do surgery. And I went, no, I don't want surgery and walk around with a bag. And I started to talk about the details of what we learn about how our body works. Sorry, everything we eat is what we eat, and it comes in and it goes out, and it has a whole process along with heart and lung. And I said, I don't want surgery. What do I need to do? And so I took chemo and radiation to chemo for 6 months. And in the last dose of chemo, with all this pain and lack of taste and all the other awful things that happen with chemo, I caught COVID at the hospital getting the chemo. And this was the first COVID, the one that was killing 1,000 of us a day. So they couldn't give me radiation yet because I was now in the hospital. Within 2 weeks, I couldn't breathe, and they didn't let you come into the hospital then until you proved positive. But then you couldn't prove positive with a home test. They didn't exist. Vaccines didn't exist. I had to take a test that took a week to get the answer. And that was in the second week. Well, in 2 weeks, that virus was killing all of us. Whereas if I'd gone in 1 week, they could have had an easier time saving more of us. But we didn't know any of that. So here I was. I went in unable to breathe, and my wife had to say goodbye, thinking she might never see me again. And And in the first day, it got so bad that by the second day, they said, if you can't breathe, this machine and this machine and this machine forcing air in. And I went, no, you can't force it into me. But I couldn't breathe. So they said, we'll put you under the ventilator. And I said, no, you can't do that because they all die. And that, I can't remember when this happened, but I couldn't breathe. And they just went, and they took me. And I, again, have no what we call regular body's memory, but I had 10 days out of body that I remember. 10 days. So I don't have time to go through all the experiences of 10 days, but I do have time to tell you the amazing experience in the last 2 days. The 2 days in which I learned afterwards that and I still never saw from above the bed, and I never saw what they were doing. I just was where I was. And in the last 2 days, they told my wife on one of the last 2 days, I don't know if we can bring him back. His lungs just have failed, collapsed so fully that virus is attacking every part of the lungs. And they told me the second night, here I am alive, but I'll tell you the second night, they said, all right, we got him, but now his heart's failing and I don't know if we can bring him back. Imagine that feeling. Well, I'm going to tell you what the feeling was where I was, my consciousness was, and my soul was. For those 2 days, the experiences up there became a specific experience of being in a geometrical dome, a geodesic dome, I think, something like that it's called. See, even failing to remember that word perfectly is damage from COVID. And I think that's damage left over from the brain injury, maybe, but I came 99% back. So I'm telling you, this COVID, I still have a lot of long COVID, aspects and impacts, but I can't complain about them or even bore you with listing them all because I'm breathing. But up in that dome, just imagine I'm on the surface of a dome on a hexagonal section with all four limbs tied to four of the corners of this hexagon. And up there on the surface of this dome, floating with me, are all the other bodies that are there in intensive care with me. And we're all trying to live. Just hanging there. And we had to be tied just like in the bed, I guess, because in the bed we had to be tied so we didn't pull all the tubes out of every orifice of our body and the extra orifices they created by putting tubes places in our vessels and everything. And you should see the photos of, I should have sent those so you could put them on the screen. I can do that if you want later. But anyway,
Give me a
in
link.
in the dome, all of the bodies one morning when somebody came and unlocked the lock, they all went and they all faded away. This was my experience. And I was stuck on the dome alone. And I had that
Somebody
moment.
unlocked the lock.
So it felt like somebody came at
Okay.
the bottom and put a key in and unlocked these latches to which we were stuck. That's what I was imagining.
Okay.
And instead, everybody else was released. And I wondered why I was stuck there, why mine was not opening. Well, I found out why later. And that is, it took another 24 hours. And I was alone. And just picture every second. This is how hard our bodies, our mind, and our spirit does to live, our soul does to live. Every second. I don't know. Imagine you're hanging on the edge of a cliff or outside of a window, right? Or hanging from a helicopter. And you have to hang on so tightly that you don't fall. I was hanging on metaphorically. I was hanging on to my life so tightly that I could feel the moments that others who've been there know that there are moments when you can let go and go. And there are moments when you can choose to stay. And there are moments when it's so close It's so close that you don't know. That's what this was like. And I hung on. I was not going to go. And I got a why. I got a calling again. First, not only because I have to come back to my perfect relationship I've ever been in, and my perfect love of my life, my wife forever, and her two kids and my two kids. I have to come back. I love living. I love breathing. I love loving. And then I love being and doing whatever I do that helps serve. But you know what? In 2020, up in that dome, you know what I got? After watching that knee on George's neck,
But what?
that knee on George Floyd's neck die.
Oh, oh,
I'm serious. In the dome, I had that consciousness after watching that and all the other things we started to watch. Yes, I, as this white male diversity expert, right, got an even deeper sense of how subtle is the consciousness we need to have to grow even more and realize how we have to never hurt another human being and take their life. And how could that have happened? Watching that. Anyway, so I know I'm not preventing us from killing and doing the lynching and all that. No, I'm trying to help myself be even more sensitive at every moment to you, Peggy, if we're having a mutual conversation and you're telling me your story, just to feel what you're feeling and be with you and serve you in whatever way is my life's calling. That's what love is. From the boardroom to the grocery store and and with friends and children and dogs and cats and we know what love feels in all those different ways. We have different words at different moments and different degrees of intimacy, but love is love. And I had to come back and continue my coaching. I wasn't going to die. It's not done. We all still know too many people, ourselves included, whatever we look like. But I was only trying to work with other white men like me. No shame, no blame. But since I am one, it takes one to know one. I wanted to keep helping myself and others like me open to all of our diversity and our love and our natural authenticity so we can be who we are with you so you can see and feel who we really are instead of just feel us as these people who think we have the right answer and we're controlling them. That's just my work. You have your work and you have your work and you have your work. That's my work. And I came back to continue doing it. So those are my three major life experiences. Sure, I have other ones. I've torn my ligaments skiing and I've broken my ankle playing tennis and my bipolar daughter has been on and off the streets and I've been in divorce and I've lost my money and we all have crises and we learn something from all of them. But these big ones are really life-changing and give us learnings that change the whole rest of our life. And the only other thing you'll enjoy hearing before you, Peggy, ask me whatever question you want is I was in this group of near-death experienced people. I was leading it, and we were so happy to have had these life-changing experiences. And when Discovery Channel, this now being 20 years ago, when people started talking about this, they wanted to interview me and three of us and put us on national TV. And we were so excited. We even admit that our human ego was back to a little bit of life and we were proud. So they interviewed us and they put us on. And when we watched it,
what was that called?
Discovery Channel.
I know, but there was a
I
program
don't
name?
remember. I want to go look it up, but you know
It wasn't
what?
one of those survived and I come back things or
Yeah, something like that. Yes.
okay.
It was about 15 or 20 years ago. But you know
Because
what?
you look familiar. I
Well,
think I seen you. I think it was I survived and come back.
you might have, but I also have a TED Talk you can all go watch
That's
called
true. I could have seen you on that.
The Gift of Near Death. So write that down, audience. The Gift of Near Death is my TED Talk. And better than my story or anybody's is a documentary I was just part of after that called Beyond Our Sight. Now they're both on my YouTube page with my name, Lewis Brown Griggs, but they're also just out in everywhere in YouTube. You just put in the words "the gift of near death" and you'll find it. And you put in the words "beyond our sight." And that one's 52 minutes, not 18 minutes. So you need popcorn or dinner or something. Okay. Anyway, back to Discovery. But when we watched the Discovery Channel, we were so irritated. They spent all of the time trying to prove that our stories were false and that we
That's a
made
dirty
them
deal.
up, or that it was brain damage that made us imagine this, but that they could recreate the same thing with electrical stimulation and drugs.
Aren't they
Oh,
God?
so irritated. You want to hear with humor? We had the best learning after that was we were so angry until we finally looked at each other, like you, Peggy, and I can look at each other and say, you know what? What if they're correct? What if it was only caused by the damage? You know what? So what? I had the experiences I had that changed my entire life. I treat people differently. I'm relating to you differently. I'm knowing my mind, my body, my spirit, my soul. I know my soul doesn't die. My body's just been damaged. I mean, it happened and it changed my life. And everything I learned, I hope you can take 10% of all of you and learn something. And each of you has a story where if I listened, I would learn something. That is life changing. We're all one and uniquely different, and we're here to love each other.
Well, what I would say to that with my story is, I was 25 years old. I came back from my NDE, and as an emergency room, I just got there and I had died in the chair. And the wheelchairs just pushed me to a room, and the nurses didn't know it. And so when I come back, all my symptoms were gone. The pain, the nausea, the ready to vomit, the feeling I was going to pass out, was all gone. I was physically fine, but I knew because I was just through the tunnel in the white light, yelling at God, telling him, I got to get back there and raise my kids, that there is no way that wasn't real. My first thought was, what the hell was that? I was just in heaven accepting it. Now I'm back. I knew that was real. Never heard of such a thing. I thought, this is my exact thought. I remember the exact words in my head. That has never happened in the history of the world. That was my
Exactly.
thought.
Exactly.
And I knew I couldn't tell anybody, or they'd put me in a psych ward. I have a sister who's really ill. I know what happened. You talk crazy. And I thought, I got to get my doctor to take me seriously. What am I going to do here? I felt like God sent me back for maybe a few more hours to give, my doctor a chance to fix me. Doctor examined me, said, Peggy, you're fine. There's nothing
Exactly.
wrong with you. I told you it's not a tubal pregnancy. Why do you keep saying that? He says, I did ultrasound earlier in the office, both babies, is pregnant for twins, are in the uterus. Why do you keep saying tubal pregnancy? And I couldn't open my mouth and say, I was just in heaven accepting it. It's dead. So you fixed it. I couldn't say that. So I said, I'm not going home. And he looked at my husband like, what's wrong with her? He says, well, he says, if make you feel better since you live an hour away, I can put you in the hospital and you spend the night. And I thought, well, yeah, that I'm thinking to myself, that works, because if I go home, my kids are going to find me dead.
Wow.
And I'm not going to have them finding my dead body. So what's my options? A or B? Die here or die there? I thought, that's my options. If he ain't going to fix me, I'm dead. So through the night, I kept waking up with this pain in my, hip bone. I'd wake up covered in vomit. And when I was on Dr. Oz, he said, every time you passed out, you died during that night. And I knew, when I don't think I had any more NDEs, I don't remember anything like that. But after so many times, I thought, God, I know you can't keep bringing me back. I knew I was dying each time. I wasn't just passing out. And I said, please keep me awake. This is my next prayer till morning. Maybe my doctor will come in, find out what it is and fix it. And that's what happened. He come
Yeah.
in, did an ultrasound and said, Peggy, it's the worst thing imaginable. You've got internal bleeding, feeling your entire abdominal cavity, clear up your chest. We got to get you into surgery now. So he said, since you're an organ donor, we're going to send you upstairs, sign away your organs. And here I am, 25 years old. I'm like 105 pounds. And I'm thinking, well, this sucks. Because I look and feel physically fine, but I'm dead here. I'm mad. Like I'm thinking you should listen to me last night. And I had called him all week before I went to the emergency room saying something's wrong. And he's like, you're fine. So I am mad. And I'm sitting there, I signed away all these organs and I'm like, I gotta get to surgery. Don't you have a paper that says just take it all? I had to sign each one, like come with all this pages and pages, everything I had to sign individually. And I was so mad. And I found out later that they had called my whole family and said I wasn't going to make it. And I'm like, I didn't think they thought I was going to die in that room. I don't think they even knew how I was still alive. Obviously,
Wow.
they got me in surgery and I ended up being all right. Of course, they had to take the babies. It was 2 months, but one was in the uterus and one was in the tube, half in and half out. That's why it looked like on ultrasound earlier, they were both in the uterus. And that's why he wouldn't believe me. But because that NDE, it saved my life. Because if I wouldn't have had that NDE, I would have thought, well, I feel fine now. I don't have more pain, I don't have nausea, I don't have vomiting. I don't feel like I'm gonna pass out. So apparently I'm fine. I would have went home and died. And that would have been the end of the story if I hadn't had that near-death experience.
That's
So
right.
anybody that would say to me, that's chemicals in your brain, that's your
Yeah.
blood. Oh, let me tell you what for. And then my night was drowning. I didn't remember. I remembered it right after it happened, but I pushed away. Like, what are you gonna say? What are you gonna do? But then after my second NDE with the ectopic pregnancy, one night I was sitting out. I was pregnant again. I lost those. I was pregnant again the next month. I miscarried those, but for that one. But I was sitting out, looked at the night sky, and I thought, I just lost the twins. I lost another baby, and my husband's big Catholic family, and they were all inside partying. And I thought, not one of them could say, "I'm sorry, Peggy." Not one.
But wait, I missed. In the first one, did you lose the twins?
I lost the twins, and the next
Ah,
month I was pregnant again. Well, I lost the twins in the ectopic.
oh, I missed that.
And then I was pregnant again, and I thought, oh, I'm gonna die now, right? But I couldn't get fixed because I knew what that was like. When I was 20, my ex-Catholic husband made me get my tubes tied because I had 2 C-sections. And back then they said you can only have two. The doctor saying you only have two. I got a second opinion. He's like, oh no, it's fine. You can have more. You can have natural. Well, my ex, he didn't want more kids. He didn't be married to me to begin with. I was pregnant, we got married, so he didn't want more kids. So he made me get my tubes tied at 20 years old. So I found out I got it reversed. And that's how come I had the dual pregnancy. You have a slighter chance of dual pregnancy after all that. And I found out later it's actually a lot higher than the 5% they told me. But so here I was, then I got pregnant the next month and I lost those around 2 months. It was just like a miscarriage, which I found out later. A specialist said that those miscarriages I had throughout my life, he says they were actually tubal pregnancies dissolving in your tube. So it was like nature was taking care of me after that. But anyhow, so I was sitting there like depressed. I'm like, nobody could say, sorry about the twins and they didn't like me and blah. And I look up this night sky. It's like this big, like outdoor movie theater, like a drive-in screen, like opened up, and I'm like immersed. And I seen the drowning from front to back. And it just like took me over. And I said, like, did I drown? So I went to the next day and I asked my mom, did I drown when I was old? We didn't have a phone back then. And she's like, yeah, you did. And they had kept it a secret in the family. Because I was the youngest of 5, would have been 6, but their firstborn died at 9 months old. Today we'd call it neglect, but my mom, she says my dad's family blamed her, and she knew what happened to me with drowning in the pond, that because my brother was carrying my dead body up over his shoulder, that everybody blamed her. So it was quiet, it's never talked about. And so she explained all that, yeah, but I could tell her where my brother was doing, and where her and my sister come down, where they were sitting. My body was at the bottom of the pond. So, it was all out of body. I was doing all this fun stuff as a kid. I'm a ghost, all right, I'll do all this. But like there again, it's like, it may try to tell me that even like that, they try to say it's out of body or it was a near death or the NDEs or just imagination stuff. Then they have to explain to me how do I have this knowledge? How did I see all this stuff? When my body is at the bottom of the pond, and I can tell you exactly where my mom and sister was sitting. I remember this NDE. They did not tell me a word.
Wow.
So.
Oh, exactly. That's why it's
like,
so
let
fun.
me at it.
That's why it's so fun sharing these stories. I'm so glad, and everybody watching is either, what, I've heard some people come back and say, well, if you haven't had one, I'm the opposite. I go, if you don't think you've had one, you've had dreams. just imagine your dream is an out of body experience. Those weird things we dream. Some of them are practical. Some of them are like, what? How did I dream that? Right. How about if you've meditated? Some people have meditated so deeply they've left their body. Some people have left their body with a drug of some sort. And I don't mean abusing them. I mean, wherever either a medical drug you were given sometimes or a recreational one, all kinds of these things, or you had an accident like ours, or even not so serious, just for a moment you fell off your bike, and as you fell down from there to the floor, suddenly it was slow motion, and that's an out of body experience. In a way, you're in your body, but you're so conscious. Well, where's our memory? Science doesn't yet know how you and I and others have perfect memory of where we were out of the body and how you knew where people were sitting there.
Well, I
I
have a
think,
theory.
just think we thought memory was in the brain, and the brain was in the body, and the body was in the car or under the water, right?
See, same with, terminal lucidity, where all of a sudden this diseased brain who couldn't talk or function, suddenly they're wise, like, and they're talking, they're communicating. And I'm like, yeah, because it's in their soul. Our
Right.
NDEs, we can't forget them. We may push them away for a time. Or, like you have this
Yeah.
signal with your brain and you can't comprehend, but this like, these are not in our brain, because when we
Right.
have them, we're not in our brain. We're not using our brain. We're not using our eyes and our ears. We are using our soul.
Yeah.
So when we come back, that memory is going to be so huge and everlasting because it was in our soul.
Yeah. Never changes.
Yeah.
Anyway. And if we get open, we can learn things. Like I discovered later that my daughter is one with whom I had had a prior life. In a reading I got that I believed, yes, she and I had lived together in a prior life, and she chose me this time, you know? And my current wife and I have had a prior life. It's like, wow, it changes everything about our consciousness. And we do all know what it feels like when you just meet somebody and go, God, I think I've known you before. Now, in your case, you probably watched me. I was on national TV and diversity, everything. I was on the Today Show, the CBS Morning News, this white guy doing diversity work, or you saw my TED Talk, or who knows? What if we saw each other in another lifetime? I don't know.
Well, when I sat down to write my book one day, I thought, well, where do I start? And I thought, well, I'll go chronological order and I'll start with my earliest memory. And I thought of my earliest memory and I'm like, can I write that? I don't even
Yeah,
understand it. And
exactly.
something said, it's not for you to understand it. Somebody else will. You just write the truth. So I put it in there and I thought, okay, they're gonna think I'm crazy right off the bat with this first memory and probably won't read past the first page. But I put it in there and I'm glad I did, because my first memory in the baby bed is I'm old enough to sit up maybe, or I was laying down and I think that I'm sitting up. I don't know. But I'm in the baby bed alone and I see my siblings running through the living room, through the doorway where I'm at. And I have this thought that I could never forget, and all through my life has come like, what in the world is that? And it was, I said, God. Now, how did I even have a voice to think like that? I said, God, you sent me to the wrong family. And I thought, I know you didn't mean to send me here. These people are weird and they don't like me. So I'm going to sit here and I'm going to wait for you to switch me to my right family. And I'm sitting there waiting. And then while I'm waiting, I have this memory of where I was before I was born. I was in
Yeah.
this white place and there were these women, like I can't see them. They're just, it's all faint and blurry, like cloudy. And they took such a good care of me. Like every wish was their command. I was so loved and so taken care of. And so I just know God wouldn't send me to this. This isn't what he meant to do. God wouldn't do that. And then it was silence. And I wrote my book, Silence was my answer. I'm alone. I have to take care of myself now. And I'm like, crap, which was so weird because after my drowning NDE, that was my thought again. Oh, I'm alone. I'm going to have to be my own mother. I'll take care of myself now. Because it was things I realized during the drowning, these adult thoughts that a child wouldn't have. Like one was, my family don't love me. And I thought, well, okay, I know my dad don't like me. I know my siblings think I'm a brat. My disabled sister and older sister, I take care of her. She don't take care of me. That's okay. But I thought my mom loved me. And then I heard a voice very clear say, God sends children here to be loved. That is why he sends them here. And I thought, wait a minute. I'm a 5-year-old still, right? Like, that's not fair. You show me my family don't love me. And then, you say God sends children to be loved. And so I grew this sense of injustice that I have to this day that does not die. Like I can't, like you're seeing this injustice stuff, and it's not right. That's not right. That's not right. It's not supposed to be like that. It's just there, and I drive people crazy with it.
Now, that reminds me that a lot of people watching might need to remember, if they are a parent, that children often say things about what their experience was up in the light before they came. They either thought they were going to be a girl, they thought they were going to be a boy, or they chose this mother or they chose this father. They remember these things and they share them between the ages of 4 and 8 or 9, when they can talk well by 4 and start talking about them. But by 8 or 9, they start getting a little more social and they start thinking, I better not say these things. And after that, they don't, even if you ask them as an adult, they'll go, I said that. I want you to listen to what they say as true, a true experience they're having.
One of my granddaughters, she is real tiny for her age, like I was, and she looks a lot like me when I was little. Her personality is a lot like mine. She's very sensitive, and her feelings get hurt really easy, and she's just so loving of everybody. But when she was a baby, my son and his wife would say, look at her, she does this all the time. She's seeing somebody on the wall, and you could just watch her. She's communicating. You can tell she don't have language, but she's seeing somebody there off and on.
That's right. Amazing. So did I hear, you didn't say it, but did I hear, if you have grandchildren, did you actually end up being able to conceive and birth the child?
Well, I had 2 children before I had to have my tubes tied. So I
Oh,
have my 2 sons.
okay.
And
Okay.
then we adopted my disabled sister's son when he was little. So they're all like stair steps.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
then I remarried after 16 years, and I met my soulmate. We've been married 25 now. But we had adopted 9, 2 sibling groups. One
Wow.
of sibling group of 5, and then a sibling group of 4.
Oh, good. Oh my God.
And
Talk
we had
about
3
love.
miscarriages.
Talk about love.
Every spring when we were first married, I had a miscarriage every spring, and that's when I ended up going to a specialist. And he's the one that said, it's impossible that you got pregnant. He says a miracle. He says, or the reverse. He said, but I guarantee you, all of those, because I lost them. I just miscarried at 2 months each time, and the same as with the one after the
Yeah.
twins. And then as my ex and I were separating, we got pregnant, and it was another tubal, but I caught it in time. My doctor knew to listen to me now. And so, I've had all this stuff, but yeah, I had,
But at least you
no, I
had,
didn't conceive and give a live birth again. But yeah, we
right.
adopted.
Yeah, but
And
you
I
had,
adopted a set of twins.
yeah, but in the beginning you said you did have 2 that grew healthily before you had these
Yeah.
problems.
My
Okay.
boys, they're in their 40s now. They're doing
Well,
awesome.
yeah, my daughter's 40 and my son's 35, so we're similar age. Yeah. Oh, so you've
I'm
had that great.
62.
Yeah. Oh, I'm older. Therefore I'm a 60s kid. We waited 10 years.
Yeah, I was born in 61. I'm 62 years old. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
I'm proud of it. All these girls, like, I don't want to tell my age. Girl, the other day, she's only 48.
I know.
And I said, so what year was your, she said what age she was. I said, what year was it? And she's, oh, I don't want to tell my age. And I realized she's 48.
Right.
Gosh, girl.
Oh, well, anyway, it's been so good to be with you and to hear your story. I'm glad you took extra time to let me hear your story too. It's
And I
nice.
want to share one thing with you. You mentioned race. And after my drowning, I was in a pre-Sunday school class. I won't go through the whole thing. I've told it so many times, but the message I got, I had this like an out of body in heaven experience, a Sunday school class. And I was told, I was coloring a picture of Jesus. It says, Jesus loves children of every color. Never forget that.
Nice.
And I never did. And I hated prejudice so bad. And when I married my Catholic husband, my first husband, when I was 18, big Catholic family. And they hated me because I had Black friends and I had been raped by a Black guy. And they
Oh.
thought that when I was 16, I was kidnapped and raped. And so they thought that I was this dirty piece of trash, and they beat me up because of it. And it was just awful. and I mean, they burn crosses in people's yards. I mean, they're really prejudiced back then. But so my biological sons are Matthew and Jeremy, and they each have a non-white child. One is a stepchild and one is adopted child. So now they go to the family reunions, and my sons are very successful and very intelligent, and and so nobody will mistreat these children, right? And so they are, they are the part of that family, and
That's great.
so they've changed. And some of us adopted Chinese children, but it was bad, the prejudice down here that I
Oh,
went through and got beat up really bad for it.
down
And
here, where I can hear it's in the south somewhere compared to Minnesota, but where?
I'm Southeast Ohio. I'm Long Bottom, Ohio. It's the
That's
amazing
right. It
county.
is
Yeah.
south. You're quite right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And actually, they won't move down here. They live around Columbus and stuff, and they like to move down here because they all work from home, their government jobs. And so like, oh, we could move down home, but they can't because they will not put the kids down here in these prejudiced schools in this community.
Thank
So
you
they
for
still,
sharing that too. It's amazing. I mean, and look at nobody's watching anymore if you're not still taping, but
oh, we're still taping until
so
we
you
say
can
goodbye.
you
Yeah.
can do what you want. Okay.
Yeah, I can do what I
So
want.
imagine that. I mean, the way we can go through our life with these crises and learn from them and come out, for you to be able to say, oh, well, yeah, when I was kidnapped and raped, well, when that was happening, that was a life crisis and a trauma. And you now understand, look at, you're completely back. You understand your soul wasn't raped. Your body
Well,
was raped.
well, when I was kidnapped and he took me to that shed, I've talked about this before and it's in my book, but I was thinking about it while ago when you mentioned going through your regression therapy, or
Right.
what that's
Yeah.
called, how you can block something. Because
Yeah.
I can remember telling my son's wife like 10, 15 years ago, I said, I said, I watch movies about kidnap and rape, and I feel like I was raped, but I never was. That's how blocked I had it. And I'll tell you why. It's because when he put me in that shed, I knew it was going to happen. I knew he was going to rape me. And I had two men tried to rape me, jumped out of bushes and tried to rape me took me out in the field months prior. And I fought and screamed, and a neighbor heard, and they come out on the porch and they come over and they rescued me, right? But so I'm a fighter. I mean, I was screaming to my voice was hoarse to my last breath. I was like 80 pounds then, these grown men, right? And I fought and I won. Here I am in a situation I can't fight and I can't scream, because he'd already took me to a lake and said that he thought about throwing me in that lake, nobody ever find me. And now we're in this shed and there's tools all on there, and he's put stuck in this fireplace or this wood burner. And I knew what was, he said, so I laid on this cot and I turned to the wall. I think I'll just pretend I'm asleep. He's gonna leave me alone. And he walked over
Oh,
to the cot and he says, I hope you don't think that I'm gonna sleep on the floor. And he was about to rape me. And I started praying, God, I wish I were on this earth. And suddenly I'm not.
yeah.
I am among the dark night sky, the twinkling stars. I'm looking down at earth. And people say it's flat or full of it because it's round. And I felt like I'm just as imagine how heavy earth is. And it's just weightless in space like I am. And I had this long brown hair, and I felt the breeze like you're at the beach, and it was a pleasure fresh. You probably live near there, but the beautiful warm feeling on your skin. And I had my clothes on, and so, and then when I thought, oh gosh, I'm 16, I can't stay up here forever, what's going to happen? Then I was back, that was over. And I thought, was that a wish come true? Did God answer a prayer? Do I have an ability to just like leave if I want? I was confused. So when I got away from him the next day, talking to the police. And so I thought, is that consensual? I thought I consented because I didn't fight and I didn't scream like before. So I never knew that was actually rape. I
Yeah.
felt so much shame, and my family actually beat me up, knocked me out cold because of that. And then I got married at 18, and his family beat me up because of that, because
What?
he was a black man.
Oh,
And I couldn't say it was rape because I thought I consented, because I wasn't, I prayed and I wasn't there. So I
oh,
didn't fight. So as you're talking about regression therapy, I'm thinking how you can block something. And for me to even tell her, I think that I was raped, but I wasn't. And then I started realizing through talking about my near-death experiences, like that was an out of body. I did not consent. I had to choose to shut up, to
Yeah.
live.
Yeah. Oh
And
my
that's not
God.
the same as consent.
No, it's just not.
And I
Oh,
think a lot of people like talking about this kind of stuff I talk about. I know people like, well, she shut up, but because I think it's really important because girls need to know that. Women need to know
absolutely. Yeah.
that if you have to shut up to save your life, that's not consent.
Oh my God. I mean, every man needs to learn that we can't even touch a child or a woman without love and tenderness, that we are capable back in the caves of killing that buffalo without having feelings about it. And
I
that's,
know.
yeah. And that means we have to absolutely notice that we are not only capable of killing, I can't imagine it, but I have to own it.
Well, my
And
husband hunts deer and he's a farmer. And I tell you, I have to put my hands on them and pray. I do. I pray with them before they're going to be slaughtered. Or after he's killed a deer, I put my hands on it and thank him for the
yeah,
food that will nourish our bodies. I mean, I cry, but I believe this is the right way God intended. Now that's just me.
that's right.
That we do, our bodies do need protein and we do need that kind of protein. And we all would not be here if our ancestors did not do those things.
I know.
So, I mean, a fish
But
has eyes and feelings too, I'm
unfortunately,
sure.
there's still men on earth killing, like Putin and others, in the Middle East, all over. It doesn't matter what color we are, males who don't yet get it, that we're all one and we need to live and love, are still killing for control or whatever. Oh,
And you mentioned the knee on the guy's throat, George Floyd, and I feel like, yes, because we all saw that. We all feel it, we're outraged because we saw it. How much happens that doesn't get
exactly,
seen?
exactly. Yep,
So we could go on all day, but
we could, but
it's
thank
been
you. What
very
a
nice
gift.
talking to you.
It's been really wonderful. So if you ever finish editing it and it becomes something you
Oh,
put,
it's not edited. I just trim off the chitter chatter at the top. And once we say goodbye, it's done and I send it out.
okay, well, and
Is that
send it out
fine?
where? Tell me where you send.
YouTube. YouTube.
Okay.
I'll send you the link as soon
Yeah,
the
yeah,
moment
yeah.
it's published. First thing I do is as soon as I hit publish, when YouTube's got it all ready, I send it to the guests so they have it first out.
Wow. Thank you. What
So,
a treat.
so you'll have
Okay.
it later today.
Thank you. No hurry.
Uh-huh.
Whenever. All right. Bye, Peggy.